Have you ever stumbled upon a set of circumstances so tangled and contradictory that no amount of explanation can make it sit right? That's exactly the impression one gets when examining the convoluted saga of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's children. And no, this isn't idle chatter or the invention of gossip columns. What we're dealing with here are official records, the clever manipulation of legal technicalities, and a cascade of decisions so peculiar that they almost seem intended to spark curiosity. Because if you take the time to trace each thread, it quickly becomes evident. This isn't just the story of two royal youngsters. It's an object lesson in image management and the extraordinary lengths some will go to shape and defend a narrative, even if it requires bending the record itself. The confusion started the moment Archie's birth certificate came to light. In the United Kingdom, there are firm rules about these documents. The mother's complete legal name must be listed, plain and unembellished. Yet when Archie arrived in May 2019, Meghan made an unprecedented move. Her own name, Rachel Meghan Markle, vanished from the certificate. Instead, it simply said, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Barely a fortnight later, this wasn't quietly adjusted with a footnote. It was formally corrected, as though someone had realized they'd overstepped in a way too glaring to ignore. But even that correction defied normal procedure. For every other royal birth on record, including the Queen's children and Catherine's, the mother's full name remained intact. So why was Meghan's wiped away? Some suggested she preferred the prestige of a title alone. Others suspected something far more calculated, a desire to obscure her legal identity's connection to her child in the official archives, should that ever prove useful. If Archie's certificate was the first clue that something odd was afoot, Lilibet Diana's paperwork turned confusion into outright bewilderment. When she was born in June 2021, her arrival was announced from Santa Barbara. Yet when reporters obtained the birth record, they were astonished to find Harry's legal name nowhere in sight. Instead of Henry Charles Albert David, the document listed the Duke of Sussex in the slot reserved for first name, and His Royal Highness for the surname, an absurdity in America, where nobility has no standing. Try presenting that at a passport office and you'll see how far it gets you. Even stranger, Meghan's full legal name appeared on Lily's record, the complete opposite of what she'd done with Archie. So in one case, the mother's name was erased, in the other, the father's. And in both instances, no official amendment ever followed. To call this a coincidence stretches belief past breaking. Then there's the rumor that simply won't vanish, that Lily wasn't born in California at all, but rather in Colorado. First blush, it sounds implausible, until you learn that Colorado has some of the most permissive surrogacy laws in America. In California, surrogates are typically named on the initial birth record. In Colorado, intended parents can be listed exclusively, sparing them public acknowledgement of any surrogate's involvement. Conveniently, these rules became easier to navigate right around the time of Lily's birth. Whispered accounts from those claiming insider knowledge insist that a young woman in Colorado delivered a baby in early June under a veil of confidentiality so heavy she effectively vanished. Not long afterward, Meghan and Harry announced their daughter's birth, without so much as a single authenticated photograph of mother and infant in a hospital setting. Coincidence, perhaps? But lined up alongside the other anomalies, it looks remarkably like an intentional strategy. When curiosity reached fever pitch, Meghan sought to put the matter to rest by revealing she had suffered from postpartum preeclampsia, a serious complication that she described as traumatic. Genuine, such a health crisis deserves compassion. But the timeline again felt improbable. Mere weeks later, she appeared in public radiant and vigorous, showing no sign of recent medical peril. Harry, meanwhile, was photographed beaming at a polo event in Aspen. If your wife had narrowly escaped a life-threatening ordeal, would you be cheerfully playing polo within days? The whole scene came across not just as relaxed but curiously staged, fueling suspicion that perhaps Meghan hadn't delivered the child herself. The matter of documentation only compounds the uncertainty. In the United States, what the public saw wasn't a sealed, certified birth certificate. It was a hospital-issued certificate of live birth, a preliminary record that precedes the official state document. Ordinarily, the final certificate follows later, embossed and definitive. Yet to this day, no one outside their circle has produced Lily's finalized California birth record. It's as though that initial form was just sufficient for a press statement, but never meant to be scrutinized in the long term. Which leaves a glaring question. If the true certificate exists, why not release it and end the speculation? The absence of Harry's lawful name on Lily's paperwork is no trivial omission. Without it, he has no automatic parental rights in the United States, no guaranteed custody, no secure inheritance claims, no legal footing should Meghan ever decide to leave. If that sounds far-fetched, remember that Archie's document did the inverse, stripping Meghan's name. 2 children, 2 birth records, each linking only one parent tightly to the child. Once might be a bureaucratic fluke. Twice points to a deliberate choice. Consider, too, the theories about why this all unfolded. For years, rumors have circulated that Harry faced fertility challenges stemming from a medical issue as a boy. Though never confirmed, this story has lingered. If he did indeed struggle to father children naturally, the use of a donor could explain why certain details were never transparently documented. After all, legal parentage in America hinges either on genetics or on formal paperwork. Without either, the door stands wide open to disputes. Even Meghan's own words have fueled curiosity. When she speaks of Lily, her tone is soft, intimate, almost reverential. But when she mentions Archie, her language sometimes shifts, more reserved, as though she's describing a ceremonial role rather than a bond. Perhaps it's simply her manner of expression. Or perhaps it hints at a more complex reality, that Lily is her genetic child while Archie is not. It's a possibility few dare voice aloud, but it would neatly account for the inconsistencies in how each child's birth was documented and announced. The timing of events only heightens the intrigue. In mid-2020, Meghan publicly shared that she had miscarried. Not long after, she was observed entering a discreet fertility clinic in Beverly Hills, carrying the telltale ice pack used for egg retrieval. Less than a year later, Lily was born. Rather than providing simple official evidence to end the conjecture, the couple released a carefully polished birthday video, allegedly filmed in the delivery room but conspicuously lacking hospital staff, protective gear, or even plausible lighting. In a pandemic era when hospitals were enforcing strict visitation rules, this idyllic footage looked more like a film set than a medical facility. Rather than reassuring the public, it invited deeper doubt. This is the thread that runs through every element of this story. Omissions that look intentional, disclosures that feel choreographed, details too conveniently arranged to be pure chance. Each time a question seems settled, another inconsistency appears. Another timeline falls apart. Another document fails to match the official version. Creates the impression of a narrative carefully constructed to conceal something in plain sight. And remember, these children are not simply private citizens. They stand in the line of succession. Should it ever emerge that their births didn't adhere to established protocols, or that their parentage isn't as presented, the fallout wouldn't just tarnish Meghan and Harry's reputation. Could plunge the monarchy into a crisis of legitimacy unprecedented in modern times. So the real question isn't whether something has been obscured. It's who will finally lift the curtain, and what will happen when they do. Because in the end, no matter how elegantly a secret is disguised, the truth has a way of surfacing. And when it does, it doesn't merely change perceptions. It forces an entire reckoning with reality. If you think all this sounds like idle fantasy, just watch how swiftly the Sussexes move to deflect. Time and again, the pattern repeats: a denial, the threat of legal action, and a distracting announcement, a philanthropic project, a heartfelt interview, or a glossy family photo. It's crisis management by the book. But no amount of polished publicity can reconcile documents that stubbornly contradict each other. Even their earliest announcements were oddly incomplete. Unlike generations before them, there was no hospital photo of Meghan cradling her newborn, no public glimpse of mother and baby together. Instead, they presented Archie behind the walls of Windsor Castle, wrapped so snugly his features were nearly hidden. From that moment, questions sprouted. Why such caution? Was there someone else involved whose presence needed to stay invisible? Some will argue that this is all about privacy. But genuine privacy doesn't demand the erasure of legal names or the production of stylized videos. When you take in every inconsistency, it begins to look less like a defense of family life and more like an effort to create deliberate ambiguity. Because in the realms of inheritance, legitimacy, and the crown itself, uncertainty can be a powerful shield. And perhaps the most striking irony is that the couple has built their brand on telling their truth. When people who claim to value openness draw a curtain over their most essential records, it raises fair questions. Questions no amount of PR can permanently suppress. At the heart of all this is a simple truth. When tradition is respected, when records are clear, ceremonies public, and timelines transparent, people feel secure in the knowledge that the lineage endures. That continuity is what the monarchy has always depended upon. When that chain of certainty is broken, even by omission, it unsettles everything it touches. And so the questions linger, unresolved, unacknowledged, and potent, until the day someone decides that clarity matters more than control. 'Cause no matter how tightly secrets are held, they have a way of slipping through the cracks. And when they do, the impact can be seismic. It's worth reflecting on how past royal generations handled delicate circumstances. For centuries, royal births were carefully choreographed to prevent precisely this kind of doubt. Witnesses were often present at deliveries, not for curiosity's sake, but to affirm the legitimacy of the child in the eyes of the court and the nation. That may seem archaic to modern sensibilities, but it served a purpose. It extinguished speculation before it could ever take root. In this case, the absence of such affirming details left an open space that rumor has eagerly filled. Even palace insiders, who typically close ranks to protect the family, have found themselves confounded by the lack of clear information. Reports have circulated that senior aides scrambled behind the scenes trying to verify the birth records themselves, only to discover they lacked access to any final certified documents. If the royal household is left in the dark, what hope does the public have of ever learning the unvarnished truth? This, more than any tabloid headline, is why suspicion persists. There's also the question of consistency. When William and Catherine welcomed their children, the procedure was transparent to the point of ritual. The official announcements were accompanied by visible hospital appearances, complete birth certificates with unambiguous names, and the quiet confidence that every T was crossed and every I dotted. By contrast, Harry and Meghan's approach feels almost intentionally inverted: private where their predecessors were public, ambiguous where others were precise. It's a reversal of tradition that naturally invites scrutiny. Some would argue that this scrutiny is unfair, that in the digital age, any young family deserves a measure of seclusion from the relentless glare of the media. And there is merit to that sentiment. Yet privacy, properly practiced, doesn't require omissions from vital records or the production of videos that resemble a polished marketing campaign. Privacy is not the same thing as selective disclosure. And when public trust in an institution relies on clarity, that distinction becomes crucial. It's also telling how each fresh question is met. Rather than offering straightforward evidence, the Sussex's representatives often respond with indignation, legal threats, or vague statements about protecting family life. But time and again, they stop short of simply releasing the one artifact that would end speculation definitively: a complete, certified birth record showing the correct names and details. That silence, over the years, has spoken louder than any press release. Consider also the effect this has on public sentiment. Even those who wish to be sympathetic find themselves unsettled by the inconsistencies. In an era when every public figure is expected to be transparent, any perceived obfuscation is seized upon as proof of wrongdoing. This doesn't mean all the rumors are true, but it does mean the refusal to clear them up fuels a corrosive doubt. And that doubt inevitably becomes part of the family's legacy. Consequences reach beyond reputation. If one day the legitimacy of Archie's or Lily's birth is formally challenged, the fallout could be catastrophic, not just for the Sussexes personally but for the institution of the monarchy itself. Crown has survived wars, abdications, and divorces, but nothing undermines its foundation like uncertainty about the line of succession. This is why previous generations took such pains to make sure every aspect of a royal birth was beyond reproach. And in the end, the most curious part of this saga is how unnecessary the ambiguity seems. A single clear gesture, a verified document, a hospital record, a straightforward timeline, could have shielded Meghan and Harry from years of speculation. Instead, every decision has created more questions. And every unanswered question has made the story more difficult to untangle. Perhaps that's the final irony. In their efforts to control the narrative so meticulously, they have ensured that the story remains alive, endlessly dissected, perpetually unresolved, and permanently etched into the public record. 'Cause where clarity ends, curiosity begins. And curiosity, once stirred, rarely goes back to sleep.